breakthrough for RCEP. How will it change global trade? Washington starts official pullout from Paris Climate Agreement. What happens now? And China begins work on 6G technology. What will it do? Now on Dialogue Weekend.
Welcome to Dialogue Weekend. I'm Xu Qinduo. Here with me in the studio are Rick Dunham and John Gong. Welcome to both of you. Well, over the past week, one of the biggest events is really the conclusion of the discussions of trade deal. Yes, I'm talking about the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So this is said to be the biggest trade deal so far in the world. It's biggest, it's significant, not only in the sense of it's being big, the largest 30% of global GDP. So 15 countries now with India out. You have the ASEAN countries, then you have China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, countries in this region. But also I think the message it carries is also very important because it carries this message of countries are still seeking cooperation, seeking multilateralism instead of isolation, instead of unilateralism, and seeking this partnership instead of this protectionism. So, John, you're an expert of trade. How do you see? And this is important. I think everybody is saying that how important it is, right?
Well, first of all, I call it RCEP. India is still officially not out yet, I think. There still might be a slim chance that it can still come back. They haven't signed it yet. I think they mentioned that they have concluded the negotiation of the text of this agreement, and it's now subject to each country's internal discussion. They're going to hopefully sign next year. And before they actually sign next year, India still may have a chance to come back. We'll see. But I'm not hopeful for that. But in any case, I think this event is significant in the sense that it represents as you said, the largest trading bloc in history in the world. The world economic epicenter is now shifting to Asia region, especially this part of the world. ASEAN countries, New Zealand, Australia, and of course the very vibrant Northeast Asian economic powerhouses, China, South Korea, and Japan. I mean, 3 countries accounted for over 40% of the world's manufacturing. So, with such a large market, such a large population, and these countries have come to it's quite a high level regional trade agreement. I think it's still a little bit distance away from CPTPP, but I think it's very close. So such a significant development represents the fact that the world trade governance is not going to fall apart with the United States sort of trying to get away from WTO. Multilateralism is going to be there. Other than that, multilateralism may be in another form. We're starting to see more and more this kind of a set of multilateral trade agreements.
As an American, I have mixed feelings about this. I think that this is a direct result of President Trump walking away from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That was one of the first things he did when he became president.
Another trade deal, yes.
It was another trade deal with almost all of these same countries. The difference is that was negotiated by President Obama, and China didn't like it because basically the United States was dictating the terms of free trade. What happened is Donald Trump leaves, he becomes unilateral, and these countries still want a trade deal because this is the largest economic bloc in the world. The difference is China steps in where the United States stepped out, and China is setting the rules. So it's a major shift as the world is moving toward globalization, but globalization without the United States setting the terms for it. And India, I think, is stuck in the middle because I think that Prime Minister Modi, President Trump, would rather have a deal where they set the terms. India wants to have more exports, but it doesn't want to have a trade deal where China's in charge. India wants one where India helped set the rules.
Go ahead.
I just want to make a point that RCEP, China's role in RCEP, in my opinion, is actually very limited. It's mostly driven by the ASEAN countries. It is actually built on the Australian, New Zealand, ASEAN trade agreement. This is the core agreement, and they expanded to a couple of more countries. So, in my opinion, China's role and China's voice and influence within the RCEP negotiations is very, very limited. It's mostly an ASEAN country-driven agenda. I think well, first of all, the United States is not so much into RCEP anyway in the first place. I think they probably views it as a competitor to CPTPP. Previous is TPP, now it's CPTPP. And you mentioned the difference between these two trade agreements. First of all, there's only a few countries of difference. Canada, the Western Pacific countries, Canada, Chile, Mexico, and Peru.
Right.
These the countries are in the CPTPP but are not in RCEP. But I think I've been actually advocating this. The potential is to maybe merge these two trade agreements, elevate RCEP a little bit higher up to the level of CPTPP, and invite these 4 countries to join RCEP. And that means that basically it's a convergence between these two trade agreements, and that would be a great thing for the Indo-Pacific area.
I mean, I agree with you. Many media reports would pit like China against India or the U.S. against China, saying that either it's the U.S. writing the rule or China writing the rule. No, it's ASEAN. They are the core of this negotiation. I mean, even when it comes to the China-India, people would say, oh, now without India, so no country is to counter China within this RCEP, this new trade deal. No, this is basically the wrong conception. Right. Remember, there's Japan. If you're talking about the countering China, Japan is the 3rd largest economy, way larger actually than India. So it's not about which country countering China or another country. It's really about, we are talking about the trade deal. You are selling products, services. You're also purchasing products and services from other countries.
But the point I was trying to make is the United States, by stepping away, loses the opportunity to shape in any way the trade pacts. And multilateralism always leads to winning situations for most or all the countries. And if you have protectionism, it's us against them.
Well, countries in this region, you see China, Japan, Australia, ASEAN countries, they are seeking partnership, they are seeking cooperation on trade. Well, on the other side of the Pacific, the United States is doing something very different. Basically, this is official withdrawal from the Paris Agreement against climate change. So let's take a look and listen to President Trump. Let's see what he has to say.
We slashed a record number of job-killing regulations. We ended the war on American energy. We're now the largest producer of energy anywhere in the world by far. And we ended the war on beautiful clean coal. I announced the withdrawal of the United States from the horrible, costly, one-sided Paris Climate Accord. Ask them how they're doing in Paris with it. Not too good. I canceled the so-called Clean Power Plan and repealed Obama's federal coal moratorium. We're putting our great miners back to work.
Well, the president does have a point in saying that the U.S. is becoming the largest energy producer in the world now.
Well, energy independence is a good thing for the United States. No nation wants to be dependent on other countries for fuel, for heating, for electricity. However, I think we have to separate energy independence from the issue of climate change. Climate change affects the whole world, and it doesn't have to do with producing energy. It has to do with consumption. It has to do with protecting the planet going forward. In this case, he is almost alone. What Donald Trump is doing is ideological. He is against multilateralism. He's against this agreement, which he thinks makes the United States and U.S. industries pay more. But at the same time, he also is he is reversing a Barack Obama priority. And I think this is part of a continuing series of unilateral moves by Donald Trump to take the United States away from multilateral institutions.
That's a good point, actually. It's not only about this, you are getting away from fighting climate change. Right. It's also about the damage to this multilateralism, meaning, all the world countries working together to fight this threat against
Well, you know,
mankind?
I think first and foremost, he is a denier of climate change. He doesn't admit that. I mean, according to him, it's a hoax cooked up by the Chinese to hurt American industries, right? Every time there's some snow in Texas and Louisiana, he said, well, weather's global.
It's getting colder, right?
Climate change. It's cold weather in New England. He said, weather's climate change. So he totally ignores science. He believes in himself. He doesn't believe in scientists' prediction, scientists' analysis. He's just ignoring science, you know. That's just the most bothering to me. He's totally ignores.
I find it also puzzling, you know, like even you don't believe in climate change, you don't even believe in, say, oh, it's getting warmer or something, or anyway, the bigger changes, the impact on our life, on our industrial activities. But if we, say, turn to renewable energy, what's wrong with doing that and have a clean environment?
Right. So I think we make a big mistake engaging with Donald Trump in the question of, is there climate change? Yes, it's obvious there's climate change. Even in the United States, an overwhelming majority of people believe it, disagree with Donald Trump. Right, well, California fires, many more severe tornadoes, hurricanes. I mean, there's much more severe weather. I think we're wasting our time when we're talking about, is there climate change? Yes, there is climate change. Let's spend the time talking about what can we do about it. And this is where the unilateralism of Donald Trump is so dangerous. The difference between 1.5 degrees centigrade higher temperatures in the next 30 years and 2 degrees centigrade higher temperatures is significant for the environment, significant for flooding in Bangladesh, for forest fires around the world. I mean, there's so much evidence, and I think that's what we should be talking about and try to figure out how the world can move forward without Donald Trump and bring the next U.S. president back in.
But I agree with you. It's important. I think the world is obviously we need the participation of the United States, the largest economy, the most powerful country in the world.
It's more than just being not present in Paris Accord. I mean, he's already taking domestic actions. You know, he said he's taking off all these EPA regulations in automobile industry, in the power utility industry. He's already doing these things. So the damage is already done. Right. So he's taking these unilateral actions to basically, you know, according to him, is to put miners to work. But you know, how many miners have people to work?
Right. I mean, it's like 1 or 2% more.
I mean,
almost nothing.
It's like about
jobs,
100 jobs created in Western Virginia.
Correct.
And at the same time, you know, you have this damage done to the climate. I think this is something very bothering. I think, you know, we're going to wait for another year. Hopefully, he's going to be out of the office, and to reverse this, in my opinion, irreversible damage that's already been done.
What you've seen in the United States is 2 sets of action. One is states. California would be the 6th largest economy in the world. California is running its own independent international climate change policy.
But EPA is challenging California's power of doing this.
Correct. You're absolutely right. But I'm saying states are trying to counter what Donald Trump is doing. Secondly, corporations. There are many corporations voluntarily doing things that benefit the environment. This is no substitute. You're absolutely right. This is no substitute for destructive actions from the federal government led by Donald Trump. But it's meant to say that that he does not speak for the U.S. in this. He has a lot of power over it. And I do think that there is rising opposition within the political system to what he's doing.
You still have a chance for next November, I think, right after the election. Basically, the U.S. they can choose to come back to Paris Agreement because it's a withdrawal process. The whole process takes 1 year to finish. So
you're betting on that the new president, who's not going to be President Trump, the first thing he's going to do on his first day is going to
be changing his mind, right?
He's not going to change. He's talking to his base. You saw them cheering every time he was talking about doing something that would help the coal industry, and he was reversing the clean energy rules of Barack Obama, and they cheer. But it's the swing voters. I mean, young voters are all over the country, and they are overwhelmingly against Trump. Educated voters, especially college-educated women.
And also, you know, the president talks about like creating jobs by basically, you know, giving up the Paris Agreement. Actually, if you are focusing on investing in renewable energy, you can still create jobs. It's the same result actually by doing different things. And by focusing on the renewable energy, of course, you're helping fighting the climate change.
This guy is always enamored with these old industries. And look at the things he's paying attention to. Steel industry. Look at the steel tariffs.
The coal industry.
The coal industry.
Right.
All these kind of old economies. I don't think he makes an enemy out of Amazon.com. You know, these are the burgeoning new industries.
It's like a new economy.
He doesn't like these things at all.
Yeah, but I do think there are winners and losers with new technologies. Kentucky, West Virginia, the coal country, is going to be a loser, period. Detroit could be a loser unless Detroit is the center of green energy, electric cars. Texas is going to be a loser with fossil fuels, but it could be the Saudi Arabia of wind energy. So the issue is Donald Trump is appealing to voters who would lose out in green energy economy.
These states are also changing. I mean, look at Austin, Texas. It's
exactly.
a booming technology town. It's not just
Texas
is not just an oil.
Texas will transition,
right.
But it's also going to transition away from the Republican Party because of the changing demographics of the state.
Well, speak of new technology, you know, I'm still thinking of whether I'm going to have this 5G mobile phone, which just started here in China this week. And also in this week, the Chinese government has announced this, the research of 6G technology, or the sixth generation of mobile, I would say wireless, you know, this telecommunication technology here. And so 6G technology is approaching to us rapidly here.
I don't know. I don't know what 6G is. I mean, people have been talking about 6G, but I've been doing some research about what 6G exactly is, but we haven't got a very good picture yet. People have been, I mean, experts. It started at the University of Aurora in Finland. The scientists have been talking about, you know, a vision, right? What can it do? What are the requirements? What capabilities does it have? But behind this, what are the key technologies? I mean, it's not very clear to me at this point. And I spent some time at Bell Labs in my career in the past. So I know a little bit about technology, wireless technology. They haven't talked about, for example, what type of modulation, what type of access, you know, these things are all still up in the air. So I think we're still at a very early age.
It's like a big kid, you know, oh, here's the new thing, I want to have it. Otherwise, you just can't afford to lose this new technology. And the United States has started earlier this year, actually, the exploration, the research of 6G technology. Northern European countries, South Korea is also doing the research.
To me, it reminds me of the old days of 2G. Because 2G changed the world. All of a sudden, we could see photographs on our phone. You could have smartphones. And then the real revolution was 3G, where you could have videos. And 4G improved 3G with speed. And some telecom companies skipped over 3G. They were behind the times, and they moved ahead with 4G. I think 5G and 6G are similar, but I want to know one thing. Does 5G work? 5G is important for artificial intelligence. It's important for government surveillance and data and the cloud. The question is, we really haven't seen it in action. And are there a lot of bugs? Do we need 6G to fix it? Is 6G a fix on 5G, or is it the next step forward?
I would say, based on my understanding, obviously, otherwise it's a step forward. Otherwise, it don't call it or give it a name like a sixth generation of technology. But for the 5G, actually, is not really for the mobile phone, not for individual users. My understanding, because I mean, 4G technology for me, mobile phone is already more or less enough, right? The speed is fine and it's working properly. But with 5G, of course, it's most important is the speed. It means that the latency is very short, it's minimal. And then my understanding is it's really for the industrial use. For example, Internet of Things, driverless cars, and AI technologies, big data. Because you need speed you need a really fast speed to connect all those things. And you want to drive. I mean, you have a driverless car. You don't want to have a delay, right, to transfer this message. Otherwise, something would happen. So I think the 5G obviously offers a solution to those development areas.
Right, it's essential for safety in cars. I mean, if you're veering from one lane to another and correct you, you need the speed, you need it instantaneous. And to me, that's why I say the question is, does 5G work? Will it do it, or do we need something even faster? Do we need something a little bit different? We haven't seen yet. I mean, the 5G is yet to be rolled out and tested in the real world.
You know, in the telecom world, there's this conspiracy theory about the odd number generation technologies generally don't work very well. It's the even even number generation.
So that's why we are looking at
2G,
4G. It's because they're the fixes. You're correct. You're correct. They're the ones that have actually gotten us that next step forward. I mean, that's why I say, is 5G the revolutionary one, or is it the first step and 6G corrects it? Is 6G going to be a huge step forward, or is it just going to be something that after we see 5G, where we do get it right in 6G?
I have a little bit more confidence in 5G. I think the technology really works. There are demos and trials already being demonstrated that this is working. And China Telecom, they're actually China Mobile is starting to deploy this service on a commercial basis. They're selling these phones. So this technology is available right now. So I'm not going to buy it anytime soon. It's very expensive. But I know people are going to buy it.
Yes,
people who are into this new technologies, who want to watch a video on a train that travels at 300 kilometers an hour without any delay, they'll probably buy it. But I can put up with it for a bit. But I think this technology in general is going to work, and the 6 technology is still very much up in the air. I mean, it's still on a drawing board. It's not going to come anytime soon.
Right.
It's going to have to wait a long, long time. Although, President Trump said something interesting. He said openly, he said, I want 5G and even 6G in the United States as soon as possible. Okay, so I was wondering what that 6G is.
he wants the tweet to go from his brain to the world without touching the keyboard.
Without typing, right? But the 6G technology obviously now is in the exploratory stage, let's say, and everybody's talking about at least 10 years. Some people say 15 years or 20 years away from now. I mean, you have to give probably 5G 10 years, I mean, for it to be really in operation. And then you have this new technology available, and then you transfer to this new technology. Huawei obviously is in a leading position. They have been doing 6G technology research for some time. Cisco is doing that together with some other governments. US is doing that. So hopefully, we don't know exactly it is, but we know it's super fast, even faster than 5G technology. Some people say it's secure. For example, if there's something wrong with 5G tech transfer, in the transfer of data, and then you need some outside interference to fix this problem. They say with 6G technology, it has its own, it's like immune system.
Correct.
It can fix inherently by itself. So it's more reliable, it's safer. I mean, at least it's our hope, right?
It's also emphasized not just speed, also what you call intelligence. In other words, it's going to enable things that that's based on collection of a lot of data to very intelligently suggest things for you. What he described as context-specific applications. So, it's not just I think the whole idea of telecom is changing. It's not just about delivering bits from location A to location B as fast as possible. It's about, providing an entire experience that is very intelligent, that is, it's something functioning like a human being,
I would imagine like every one of us in the 6G technology era, so it's got connected to this internet one way or another, all in the multiple fronts. So, and somehow like a mobile phone is more than a mobile phone probably at that time. And so it's a different world now.
You carry your phone, when you come to work here, it's going to pump you need a coffee. And maybe a coffee is coming, something like that.
And also,
so it's an intelligent network.
And I would believe we're beyond what we think of as the mobile phone, because even if you go back 20 years ago, and before smartphones, when we had stupid phones, and they were huge, I think we can't even conceptualize today what it will be. This machine that we're using, whether it will be like our fingernail, and how we will communicate with it. I think that's one of the amazing things. Even our own business now, the news business, how are people going to be doing it? Is it going to be artificial intelligence? Is it going to be through a screen, or is it going to be in the head? It will be a chip.
That would be a great change over there. So let's leave it there for now and take a look at this week's NEWSMAKER. Well, JUNIUS Ho, obviously, he is a vocal opposition to this violence in the protest. He's critical of the protesters, and that's why, probably that's why, it's my understanding, he's singled out and he was attacked by this guy. But of course, you know, what we know for sure is he's being attacked. You have the video recording over there, but we're not sure is like for what reason, for what purpose. And this guy, you know, what he's going to achieve by attacking JUNIUS Ho. JUNIUS Ho was campaigning in his constituency for this district election upcoming, and he's you know, he's a representative of this opposite voice against the protesters. Obviously, people are not happy with him over there.
Right. Protesters disagree with his pro-mainland positions. I think an issue that's coming out in the last few weeks is the rise of what I would call the violent minority, the anarchists, the nihilists, who believe that peaceful protests, the massive peaceful protests that we've seen for months, are not going to go anywhere. And we don't really know who is behind this, but it is not good for the movement, for the protest movement.
It's not just violence. I think it's turning terrorism. I mean, it's very clear to me it's turning terrorism. It's becoming like Northern Ireland. They're using these skills in Northern Ireland. Look at, I mean, it's not an isolated incident. The police neck is being slashed. They're putting debris on the train racks to try to derail trains. They're setting fire in a building, right, where people still in the building. It's like murder, right? So all series of events, I think, they are acts of terrorism. I think the Hong Kong police have to deal with it. It's just getting very, very vicious and getting very dangerous now. I think, you know, shouldn't be overlooked. I think that there are elements in the opposition that are doing things associated with terrorism, in my opinion.
The biggest issue is, what's the end game? Where do we go? How does this end? And it's not a happy ending. When you have violence like this, it's hard to see what happens. All governments, no matter where you are, even if you view Hong Kong outside of the context of being part of the mainland, the government wants order. I mean, the governments don't want to see riots, don't want to see anarchy. You have to, at some point, restore order, and that it's going to be worse before it gets better.
On this note, I want to mention Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida. He went to Hong Kong saying there's no violence in Hong Kong. It's all peaceful demonstration. Look at these things I've just mentioned. Arsenal in a building, right? Trying to derail a train, slash people's neck, stab this lawmaker. And you're talking about no violence here in Hong Kong?
The U.S. senator over there.
Yeah, he went to Hong Kong saying that there's no violence.
I agree with you.
There's no violence. I mean, if there's no, I mean, I would say if these things happen in the United States, these people would be dead, would be shot on the spot by the police in Philadelphia, Los Angeles, in New York City. So, you know, saying
so
that...
you mentioned a good point here. That is like whatever grievances you have to do it in an orderly way. You have to follow the law. You have to follow the rule. Hong Kong is a place, I think one of the cornerstones of Hong Kong is really the rule of law. Now, the problem is like people somehow are disregarding those rules, those laws. I mean, nowhere in the world that can be accepted.
Well, I mean, I lived through this as a young person during the Vietnam War protests. You had hundreds of thousands of people who would protest peacefully.
Did you involve violence?
Well, that's the point. Was there were extremists who did. They bombed draft offices, and there was violence, and people were killed, and it hijacked the movement. And people in Middle America, the silent majority, as Richard Nixon called them, responded very poorly to the violence and to the cause that the violent people were defending. And I think that there's a similar risk in Hong Kong, that the violence, which you cannot endorse, overshadows the peaceful protesters' requests.
I think that's the priority for Hong Kong, maintaining law and order or restoration of law and order. Then we will deal with all the grievances. Anyway, let's hope things will get better in the very near future in Hong Kong. Well, with that, we are coming to the end of today's show. You can also watch us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. You can follow me on Twitter, Xu Qinduo. Thank you for watching. See you next week.